So what you're looking at here is a set of individual throttle bodies, or ITBs for short. These come off the E46 M3 on the S54 engine. And I really wanted to record this for you guys because I always get questions when I'm rebuilding these. They're becoming so much more popular now that they have adapter kits, but there's still not too much information out there on these. So this is what we're working with. The customer doesn't feel too confident in putting these on a brand new engine. These have been sitting for 5+ years, and they also tend to gunk up and stick when they've been sitting for that long. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to have to strip and disassemble all this before I can vapor hone and zinc plate all of the hardware. So what I'm going to do first is just pull back this tape just to see where we're at with these. I want to see what the butterflies look like. This tape is so stuck on there, it's very hard to get off. I'm just trying to heat up the adhesive so I could just peel it off a little bit easier. So here are the butterflies. There is some carbon buildup. I don't see any scoring, but obviously I'll have to move the throttle plate a little bit. So this plastic rod here, you could basically come in with a flathead and just pop it off. You just want to be careful if you are reusing these because they do get brittle over time. You can purchase them new from BMW. This basically just connects the throttle rod to the actual ITB itself. So as I'm taking things apart and labeling them, I want you guys to note here why it's important to actually go through these parts. So if you can see here, there's a hairline crack through the head of this rod. So this attaches to the ball right here. If I gave it to him back like this without this part being replaced, over time this will actually open up and this throttle body won't move because it'll break off of here. So with the rods taken off, these are some of the only components that you don't have to label. They're all the same throughout. Basically they just attach the ball of this, so the moving rod to the stationary throttle body. Like I said, they're all the same all the way across. What we're gonna do now is actually take off this 8mm bolt on the front of the rod. That'll pop off this individual throttle body and it'll give us this rod to work with. So with that bolt removed, we can actually wiggle off this first throttle body. As you can see, this is our first one off. We will be disassembling this. So what we're looking at here is the ITB number 1. This is different from the rest. You have the bolt here, which is for the vacuum block and also the fuel rail. And there is some few differences. They'll have a TPS, or a throttle position sensor, on the front of here that will take off with 2 Phillips head screws. And there is some differences on here. So I'm going to show you guys that right now. With those 2 bolts removed, you can just wiggle this off. And this has an O-ring inside. Only buy genuine sensors if you will be replacing this, and don't forget the O-ring on here. This is what it looks like inside of there. We have a C-clip that I'm gonna have to take out because we need to take this throttle body plate out. So next up, we're gonna take off these flatheads on the throttle body plates. You wanna be careful with these. Do not strip them out. Use a screwdriver that fits perfectly. So with the 2 inside screws removed, you can actually open this, and you just want to slide this plate out and just be very careful. You're gonna have to move it back and forth because it is gonna be stuck in there a little bit. You just don't want to damage or scratch the actual inside of this board. So I'm just working very gently back and forth, letting it do what it wants to do. And as you can see, it slides right out here. So make sure this is faced towards the front. This is all going to be cleaned off as well. We'll put that up here. And right now you're left with the rod in there, so we're going to take that out now. If you look over here, there's actually a small clip inside of there. It's a C-clip. So I'm just going to take these, spread them apart, and pull this off. So the key here is actually open up this C-clip the same time you're pushing this rod. And this will actually slide out. So as you can see here, we have the C-clip. We'll throw that to the side. And then this is all going to come out, but you will have a shim. So as you can see here, there is a shim here. I'm gonna go ahead and take that out just to show you guys. So the flat face will be towards the race, and then the outer portion, or the bubbled portion of the washer, will be towards this way. So I'll go ahead and put that to the side as well. And at this point, we could slide our rod through just like this. It has some carbon buildup, so it's gonna take a little bit. Just be super careful with it. This is brass and it can break. And then on here, we have our spring and our plastic clip. So these two, just like that. All right, so unfortunately, the disassembly of everything here wasn't even recorded because I had a low storage message on my iPhone. And I basically recorded everything without looking, looked back at my iPhone and realized that it cut off midway through one of the clips. So a bunch of those tips and tricks were kind of just lost. What I'm gonna try and do now is put everything back together in a super detailed manner, just so I could throw those tips back in there for you guys. I really do apologize, trying to get better at this, but again, I'm fairly new, so just bear with me. Anyway, what I did is went ahead and vapor honed all of these throttle bodies. So each individual ITB is now completely, let me just get this to focus, is now completely clean inside and out. So you can see the casting perfectly. I went ahead and polished the rotating rod, and then I went ahead and zinc plated all of this. Now taking a look at this portion of the rod, it's actually brass while the end is metal. So I zinc plate the end, but not the middle, because as you can see, there's two wear marks here and here where it contacts the housing. And if you're actually zinc plating these, you're adding material onto it. So unless you're taking a before and after measurement, I don't like to mess with the tolerances. So I basically just leave these as is. Now, as far as the plastics, I actually just went ahead and bought them. These are called throttle body pull rods. I'll go ahead and put the part number right here for you guys. You can still purchase them new from BMW. Also went ahead and vapor honed these collars, so those are looking good. Now if we take a look at the actual throttle body plate itself, or the butterfly, these are also super nice. These are vapor honed as well. You don't want to use anything too abrasive because it is brass, so you can basically gouge the surfaces of them. All right, so let's just get started with number 6. So this ITB specifically has 3 bolts on the bottom, and that houses part of the harness. So the only 3 bolts that came off of this were these 3. They are the largest, so these are the 10 millimeters, and you have just 3 that go onto here. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw these on. It's about the easiest part of this, and you don't have to screw them all the way in. So now that those are in, we're gonna go ahead and assemble our butterfly. So if you take a look at these 3 washers, every single ITB has 3 washers. So these 2 washers are identical, and these are gonna go on the outsides of the bearings, and they basically just protect here and here. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Also, we have a super small shim. And this is gonna be the smallest in diameter and also the thinnest, and it's gonna go on the inside of this. So you're gonna slide that first down this brass rod. That's gonna go right there. So as you can see, we have our shim on there. We're gonna go ahead and take one of the other washers. Also, I didn't zinc coat these because there is some tolerances and I don't really like messing with those. So you're not gonna see these anyway. That's pretty much why I don't do it. You can do it if you want to, but like I said, you'd have to take measurements before and after. So that's why I skipped that step. So we have the shim in, also the first washer in. We're gonna go ahead and take our plastic clip, and this basically just sits here. It rides on this little surface. So that's cool. And then we take our spring, and our spring is also gonna sit right on there. Now when installing the spring, you wanna make sure that you put it on this way. So as you can see, this little bent tab is faced to your left, and then just the skinny singular part is facing straight up, and it's all the way to your right. This will basically clip onto the ITB housing itself right here, and then this will be held on. So just put it in like this. That's pretty much good to go. Now let's take a look at this right here. So basically top and bottom, as you can see right here and right here, you have needle bearings. So what I like to do is take some gun oil, and I'm actually gonna go through here and just squirt some oil. You could do assembly oil, you could do motor oil, whatever. These are rotating, so I like to just pack some grease if you can. Whatever you wanna do to lubricate these. I'm just using some gun grease, like I said. I like using this because it has a little bit of a tip on it, so I could kind of get in here and do what I need to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and lube these up real quick. I like to just put a little bit and then rotate them. Now, if you have really seized bearings, what you want to do is go into here and actually kind of just scrape them off with a fine pick and just loosen them up if they don't rotate. If they are rotating, you're good to go. But if not, you got to take the precaution and actually go ahead and do that, because this assembly basically rides in here. So that's how that works. So now what I'm gonna do is take my rod, I'm gonna insert it into here. You wanna be very gentle and just go back and forth. If it doesn't slide, take it back out and reassemble it. It should all be very smooth. Nothing should be binding, nothing should be making noise. If you did go ahead and vapor hone this, make sure all of the debris is out. You don't want anything inside here causing any dilemma. I just kind of got hung up there, but as you can see, this just slides in. So now what I'm gonna do is take this little piece right here. So once this piece is over the ledge, you're gonna go ahead and take your singular piece, which is in here. You might need a pick, and basically you wanna do 1 revolution of tightness. So I'm just gonna put it over this ledge right here and show you guys what I need to do. So basically, I need to get this right behind here so it holds tension on the spring itself. It's a little bit finicky. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get it on video. So just like that, we have the spring on the outer portion of here, and we have the bent one on this ledge. So that's the assembly there. Now on this side, you'll see a little groove right here. So what I'm gonna do, so we're gonna take our washer, which is directional. We're gonna put it right here, which is also gonna protect the bearing, like I said. And now we're gonna put our little C-clip right on the end here. So I'm gonna take this clip, and we're gonna fit it right into this groove. And I'm just gonna push it on. Just like this. You heard it just snap into place. So now this assembly functions as it should. There's no grinding, you don't hear any noises. It's as smooth as it's gonna be. We also just put oil in it. So at this point, we could go ahead and put our butterfly inside of here. A few things to note which are very important about this butterfly is that, as you can see, it actually has a certain cutout and it's bent a certain way. So the INC should always be facing towards the top of the ITB. Number 4 should be facing down. And this is also going to be your front. The rear section has nothing, no print, anything on the back. So it'll go in just like this. What you need to do so that you don't bend this, right, is that you need to open the throttle body all the way. And you're going to be very gentle with this. You can also put a little bit of assembly lube on here. You're going to slide it right in. Just want it to fall into place without letting go, because you don't want to bend anything. So as you can see right here, it is fully sealed on the front and back side. It just takes a little bit of finesse, but basically you're trying to align these holes with this, and you also want it to be perfectly sealed on the outer portions. Now I'm gonna take my 2 brass screws, which are right here, and I'm gonna insert them here. I'm also gonna add some blue Loctite just so they don't fall off. These are super small, so I'm gonna take a little bit of a tweezer and just drop these right in. Now with these in, you want to make sure that you do not strip it. You have 1 chance to put these in. They are brass and so is the rod. So you want to put some pressure downwards the same way that you're twisting this. But you could also go backwards just to make sure that they're threading in appropriately. So now that I have both of these snug, I'm going to go ahead and push down and just give it about another 1/4 of a turn. Again, you do not want to strip these. So what we're looking at here is the actual back of the ITB. On the newer style throttle bodies, some of these are actually staked on the back side of the brass nuts. They kind of just oval it out so they can't really back off. So along with the thread locker, I'm going to go ahead and basically just stake both of these. So I'll make 2 indentations. You also don't want to crack the rod itself, so don't act too harsh on it, but you just kind of want to put a little indent in them just so they don't move. So now that we have this ITB assembled, what we're gonna do is actually rotate this, which rotates the butterfly. So we're manually opening it, and what I'm doing right now is actually listening to if I hear noise. So this is super smooth. If you hear any grinding, anything like that doesn't sound correct, you wanna go ahead and clean out the needle bearings again. As you can see, this is operating very smooth. And this is gonna be ready to assemble on the rod, which we're gonna do later. So now I'm gonna go ahead and assemble the rest of these. So 5 through 2, and then 1 is gonna be different. So I'm not gonna show 5 through 2 on camera because it's gonna be the same thing as this one, but I'll show 1. All right, so I have 2 through 6 completed. What I said I'm gonna do is actually go ahead and do number 1 for you guys, just because it's a little bit different. So I'm gonna go ahead and still put oil on the needle bearings. So that's good to go. I'm gonna take my rod, I'm gonna take the smallest one, which is the shim, and I'm gonna take the medium-sized one, which we've been working with this entire time. We're gonna go ahead and slide this on just like this. We're gonna take the plastic, slide that on, and again, spring in the same orientation. So the 90-degree bend is gonna go to the left. We're gonna slide that right on here. Now we're gonna insert the shaft. Again, wiggling it back and forth. This portion of the spring goes on the ledge. Again, we're going to pre-tension the spring. So that's good right there. Now we're gonna take the only washer that was actually a different diameter than the rest, and we're gonna slide it in here. Before I do that, just gonna add a little bit more oil. Right around just like that. So this is the only one that'll fit into this little groove in here. It is a kind of a tight tolerance. You can shake it, it falls in right there. So that's good to go. Now we're also gonna take the only different C-clip, which is actually just these two prongs. We're gonna slide this over, and then we wanna spread it apart and make sure it sits in the groove down in here. So it's hard to film in there, but that is the C-clip installed. And as you can see, once it's installed, this rod has no movement. You shouldn't be able to move it in or out. If you do, this isn't seated properly. There is kind of two lips on there, if you could see, so it's got to be the furthest one away from you. And that's that. Now we're going to go ahead and install the butterfly. So again, we're going to face the INC up and the number 4 down. Open the throttle body up, and you want to just snake this in as best you can. If there's any friction, like right here, it's a little bit stuck, you kind of just want to play with it until it gets out. You don't want to put any pressure where it doesn't want to be, right? As I sort of get this in place, I'm going to let go with my thumb just to see if the throttle body, see how it's almost going itself, but it's still a little bit off. I'm going to go ahead and try and just maneuver this. Now I'm almost there, still got to play with it just a little bit. You never want to let this snap shut because the brass will actually conform and then it'll be out of shape and you'll get some vacuum issues. So just like that, you see how it just fell into place perfectly? That's what you want. And now we could go ahead and insert our screws. You want to make sure that those are perfectly visible and you're not going to obviously strip them when you're putting in the screws. So once again, I'm going to add some blue thread locker to these brass bolts. I'm going to go ahead and put them where they need to be. And then we're just going to snug them up. As you can see, the thread engagement caught immediately, which is great. That's what you want. On both sides it caught immediately. That means the throttle body was where it needed to be. So what I like to do is just get one side hand tight. I'm going to go ahead and get this side hand tight as well. That way I know the throttle body is perfectly even in the bore. And then again, just gonna give it about a 1/4 turn tightness. And that's really nice in there. Now we could let it snap because it's perfectly in the bore. Again, 0 noises, everything works as it should. So that's the only difference between number 1 and the rest of these. So with each individual throttle body assembled, we can go ahead and install them onto our rod that we also polished. So if we take a look at number 1, it has needle bearings at the top. Again, these need to be lubed. Number 2 doesn't have it, but number 3 has needle bearings. These 2 do not, and then number 6 also has it at the top. 1, 3, and 6 need to be lubed accordingly. So if we take a look at the rotating rod, we could tell it's the front because it has the threaded portion for the bolt. It also has this little C-clip channel, and that's how you could differentiate the front from the back. Also, if you see this, it's a perfectly diametered hole, whereas if you move farther down the shaft, it's actually oblong. So the reason why this is important is because the perfectly diametered hole will need to be fit with the shoulder bolts. So these are partially threaded bolts, and the diameter for the portion that's not threaded is actually perfect for the rod. As you can see here, it fits nice and snug. The fully threaded bolts, I'm gonna try and focus up real quick, is actually for these oblong holes because they have some movement within them side to side, and this is super important. So first things first, let's start off very easy, and we're gonna go ahead and coat the needle bearings and spin them. Again, this is a step that you do not want to miss. So what's super important is the actual assembly of this, and I'm going to try and go through it step by step so you guys understand what you need to do. I'm going to go ahead and get started with cylinder 1 because, again, we know which one is cylinder 1. So we're going to take these collars and we're going to put them on after the throttle body. So in this case, number 1 is going to slide right in. Put it in between the clip and the bolt. So as you can see the rod here, it's going to go in between the clip and the bolt. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to take the bolt along with the washer, also zinc plated. I'm going to put some thread locker on here on the end, but for now, I'm just going to thread this on just so I could install this stuff. I'm going to slide it to the end. I'm going to take my big C-clip, and I'm going to push it right on here. It's going to take a little bit of force. So all we did right here was sandwich the first ITB between the bolt and the C-clip. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this bolt without thread locker, and then later on when it's installed on the engine I will use thread locker. So this is just an 8mm. I'm going to go ahead and just snug it up real quick. Again, just hand tight, so as long as we have it here, as you can see there's really no movement in that. So now what we're going to do is actually install these collars. These are super important. There's only one way that they go in. So if you can see here, we have the knob right on the ITB itself. The knob on the shoulder has to face the same way. So it has to go on just like this. Can't go on this way because it'll contact the vacuum caps, right? So it has to go on this way. So what we're gonna do is slide it from the end all the way on. Okay, so I just went down the line and installed all of the shoulders and ITBs. I feel like it would be easier for me just to go through it rather than go one by one with you guys. So as you can see, all these shoulders on each ITB are faced the same direction. The only one that's different is the one directly in the middle. As you can see, this one after number 3, in between 3 and 4, they're faced towards each other. And you might ask yourself why. This doesn't connect to a throttle body, rather it connects to your throttle actuator on the engine itself. So this one is going to be held in with a partially threaded bolt, and so is cylinder number 1. So these are the only ones you can thread fully off the car. All the other ones, as in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, they're all going to be full threaded bolts on the shoulder of the rod. So they have movement. That's why it needs to be on the car before you fully engage those threads. So let me go ahead and show you guys how to insert these bolts correctly. So we're going to take the first shoulder, which is the perfectly drilled bolt. We're going to turn it down. We're going to take our partially threaded bolt. We're going to stick it through this side. And then the nut is actually going to go right here. So collar number 2, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to face it down. So we're going to take the full threaded bolt. We're going to stick it in the back side here. Take our bolt, tighten this up. Now we're going to take another fully threaded bolt. We're going to go to cylinder number 3. Turn this down as well. Insert this from the back. And then our nut goes on the front side. So this one is actually going to be a partially threaded bolt, right? And it's going to do the same thing. So again, this one is different. This is going to be the perfectly drilled hole. We're going to take our partially threaded bolt, come in from the back side just like all the other bolts, and we're going to thread the nut on this way. So all of the nuts go the same way as well as the bolts, just this shoulder is in a different orientation than the others. Come over to here, stick the bolt in on the back side, grab our nut. Same thing for all the rest. So right now we can move this rod, but it doesn't move any of the ITBs. And that's because we need a connection between the two. So that's where these plastics come in. So basically just the ball goes onto this cup. You got to squeeze them on pretty hard until you hear them snap in, just like that. So we're going to do that to all of these. The only one we're leaving is the one that goes on the actuator. We don't need a clip on that because it has its own. We're gonna take the bottom of this and go behind. So I went ahead and just turned this around for you guys. So we have this free floating rod with all the plastic connections now. We're gonna put them all in the same orientation and we're gonna connect them to the ITBs now. So now those are all snapped in and connected. Now with all of these connected, what we could do is snug up the first shoulder and then the throttle actuator shoulder. Everything else we have to install on the car. These are the only two, again, with the perfectly drilled holes. So we take a 8mm box end wrench, put it on the back side, and then tighten this bolt. So I'm gonna go ahead and just like this. You don't have to crank these down, you just want them snug, just like that. So what I'm also gonna do now is disconnect this bolt again. So I'm gonna take this off, even though I just installed it, because now I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on it. I just wanted to get everything on the rod first. So this will come threaded out. Make sure the washer is in the correct orientation. I'm gonna take my blue Loctite, just add a little bit to the end of here. We're gonna go ahead and snug this bolt up. Again, it doesn't have to be overly tight. Just right there is good. Now we're gonna take our two last Phillips head bolts. And I don't have the sensor yet, but basically it'll just be put on right on cylinder 1. But for now, I'm just gonna screw them in while I wait. I gotta talk to the customer and see if he's ordering the sensor or I'm ordering the sensor, but either way, it'll get here. I just don't wanna leave these out for now. So this is it, as assembled as it could get off the car, but we will have to install it on the car before we could tighten, as I said, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you've made it this far, you're probably asking yourself why I haven't adjusted any of these screws. And that's because a lot of people tell you not to. And I'm gonna tell you the reason why. So all 6 of these are adjusted from the factory. Those are your throttle stop screws. The reason why you don't wanna mess with this is because there is a certain feeler gauge that you need to install on here. What happens is this gets installed onto the car. Once you do that, you want to actuate the throttle actuator on this one. You want to push it so that it's closing all of the throttle bodies. So what that's going to do is it's going to jam between this actuator lever and this throttle stop right here. So according to the TIS manual, it's a 0.05 millimeter. So you'd insert this here, you'd close all of the throttle bodies, and basically what they say is that this feeler gauge should not fall out. So it should jam itself in between this, and it should be smaller than that value. If it isn't, that's when you'd have to undo this screw and you'd have to turn this however much or little it needs to be to close that gap up. That's why I said it's better off if you do not touch these. Again, if you have touched these, that's how you readjust them. I wish I had a car here to show you guys. I don't at this particular moment, but basically that's what you do. Okay, so I'm gonna flip this over one more time and explain to you guys what you need to do from that situation. So pretend like these are all on the car and you just use the feeler gauge on every single shaft. After that, what they expect you to do is actually push this. So each shoulder, again, you're not gonna mess with number 1, you're not gonna mess with the throttle actuator one. But 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, what you're gonna do is push this down until the stop rests against the throttle screw. Once you do that, it's going to take 2 people. You tighten down this. These all get torqued to 7 Newton meters, and you want to do that for each one of these down the entire line. So another question I get all the time when I do these, and it's a great question, is how do I sync these? So if you haven't touched the throttle set screw, like we just spoke about before from the factory, these are all synchronized all the way across the board, and they should seal up perfectly. In the case that you accidentally did, or you want to tune these a little bit, you're going to have to adjust each individual one. So you would run a smoke test on each ITB, and you don't want anything coming out of here. You want these to seal up as well as possible. All right, so let's just say you did touch this throttle set screw and you already went through the procedure, which I explained before with the feeler gauge underneath here. The next step after that would be to actuate the servo motor or the throttle actuator via INPA, which is the BMW software. And that'll actually open up each ITB. So what I did here, just to show you guys, was take out this bolt so the shoulder can move free. And I'm gonna activate it as if the car was. So basically it would open up here. And what BMW explains is you'd have to take a set of calipers and you'd put it in here. And I have it set for the correct already. But the value that it explains to measure from the top of the throttle body to this actual housing would be 24.66 millimeters, and it gives you a 0.2 millimeter in between. So if you're within that range, then the spec is good and this ITB is good, you can move on to the next. So that's how you would fine tune this to be within the BMW expectations of how this motor should be ran. Another way of going about this is you could actually get a carb meter, which is like an old school hot rodder trick, and you would have to seal it up perfectly to each ITB itself. Make sure that there's no vacuum escaping anywhere, and you would measure the air metered through each ITB, but it would have to be while the car is running. So it's not really a procedure that I do too often, but it'll get you within the same means. It just might not be as accurate. I really wish I had an E46 in front of me just to show you guys what it would be like for a poorly managed ITB compared to like a really well synchronized ITB, and the difference that it makes in idle quality of an E46. I just don't have the car in front of me right now. Like I said, I'm doing this for a customer, so I'm just servicing it off the car. I tried to make this video as comprehensive as I could. Again, without a car in front of me, it is a little bit challenging. Hopefully you guys followed along and you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, you could always leave them in the comment. I'll do my best to respond to all of them. But that pretty much wraps up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and here's some beauty shots.